It appears the United States of America is putting its own interests first with their ongoing occupation of Syria, with the US using its presence to strike deals with terrorists and unrecognized bodies as it continues to exploit Syria's resources to the benefit of US oil corporations and Washington. The latest move has seen Damascus condemn a deal between the Qassad militia and the US under a pretext of a US oil company seeking to upgrade and modify the oil fields in the region, capable of producing around 380,000 barrels per day. A statement from the Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs claims the Syrian government highly condemns the move by the US and the militia, and in particular against the US government, who have clearly had a hand in the deal. The Syrian MFA went on to claim that the deal was null and void, illegal, and that the deal shows that the illegal terrorist groups roaming Syria under US protection are nothing more than US proxies and puppets in the region, hence quashing the credibility of a deal. It seems that the backbone to the agreement comes from a deal between the US and Kurdish militia groups occupying the eastern Syria region, showing the close US and Kurdish alignment, reflecting the protection and relationship between the Kurds and US military in Iraq and other West Asia regions. Another theory behind the deal is that the US is balkanizing or partitioning Syria, and it's an idea that's been stated before. The same approach had been presented in the past by presidential contender Joe Biden in the case of Iraq. But as usual, those in the know understand that once again, it's the hawks in the corridors of Washington that are behind the deal, not only in order to maintain their illegal positions and control in Syria, but ultimately to exploit the resources of an occupied country. This is something that the US has used as a tried and trusted method in the past, but is the deal truly legal and valid?
Well, it can't legally take place. It is totally illegal, and in fact our entire presence in northeastern Syria and elsewhere, maybe along the Jordanian border, is also totally illegal. There's no UN authorization. There's no decision of the Security Council. There's no self-defense aspect involved here. And remember, President Trump has said repeatedly he wants to get our forces out of there, yet they're still there in Syria. They're still supporting these anti-government groups, and now they're doing supposed business deals that are taking sovereign Syrian property and giving it to third persons and other companies that have no authorization for it. This is totally illegal.
The US has always claimed that the sanctions they impose on others are smart sanctions, designed at stopping a particular individual or group from doing something. The truth, however, is far from the theory that the US adheres to, as sanctions are nothing more than an extension of power, often affecting the people of a nation. The so-called Caesar Act sanctions on Syria are no different to the theory just mentioned, with the policy being implemented by the US hitting the healthcare system of Syria right where it hurts. During a time of the coronavirus pandemic being a global threat, this is clearly viewed as a direct attack on the people of Syria, who now have no access to healthcare or equipment. It seems that for the already fragile healthcare system in Syria, which has already been deeply affected by war and the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, doctors in the nation are unable to speak to their suppliers, place orders, or transfer payments to obtain vital medical equipment, as suppliers are conscious of dealing with Syria due to the Caesar Act sanctions. Yet it's clear to see that the sanctions being placed against Syria is nothing more than a direct attack on the people who, like other nations in West Asia, do not wish to comply with US policies and are paying the ultimate and very unfair price, raising the question as to just exactly what it is that the US hope to achieve by sanctioning Syria.
I can't say that I can see a clear, coherent intention. Look, since 2011, the United States policy has been essentially regime change to try to overthrow the Syrian government. Now, President Trump has indicated he wants to get our troops out of there. It's clear to everybody that the Syrian government is not going to be overthrown, but yet we are still meddling in Syria and still causing damage in that country. To what end, to what policy purpose? Nobody quite knows. I think the only one really people can point to is to try to interrupt what is perceived as an Iranian line of influence, east to west, between Iran, Iraq, and Syria.
The US is guilty of nothing more than a form of collective and coercive punishment against the people of Syria, Iraq, Iran, and North Korea, with their maximum pressure policy. Is this cruel and wicked use of soft power then nothing more than placing an ant under a magnifying glass?